So it's fashionable to say, really happy to be here. I think one thing that will hopefully come out of today is I want to share a little bit about EmpathyLab and our journey, but what has become such an important part for us is our relationship with authors and the importance of creativity and writing. So I'm going to be drawing on work that sometimes takes place over 2 days in training sessions for schools, 2 days in training sessions for authors, and I'm going to compress that into just over 10 minutes, so I will be going at quite a pace. I'm really happy to expand on anything if there was anything that you found particularly interesting afterwards. But just to start, EmpathyLab, I'm a co-founder of EmpathyLab, far grounder than it sounds. A group of us being 4 people, Craig, Sarah, Miranda and Scotty, obsessed with the power of stories to change children's perceptions on life, got together and said, the world's in a mess, surely there is something more than could be done with stories. But we had a completely clean sheet of paper, sat at a kitchen table, we didn't know if we wanted to become an activist movement or we wanted to work with schools or write books or what would we do? And what we've done over time is developed EmpathyLab, and we're doing loads of different things. We're very small, and I just want to humbly share with a number of people that I feel I will be preaching to the converted of what we have done and the power of the work that groups like you can have to make the world a better place. Very early on, we talked to academics and said, if you could do anything with stories, if you had some people who are ready to go and do stuff, what would it be? And they said, empathy. And these were academics typically just saying, there is something special about empathy and reading which we're only just beginning to understand. So we started looking into that and try to understand it better. Now, what I would do in a workshop at this time is sometimes say, does anyone know when empathy was invented? And I won't go through that now because we don't have time, but typically there would be, was it in 1910 when the word was coined from a German word Einfühlung, which means feeling in? Or would it be when mirror neurons were discovered? Or was it when emotional mirroring was? But the truth is that empathy has been around for a very long time. The real answer would be probably about 2.5 million years, because if you look at our evolution as a species, what has made us different, for good or for bad, to every other species on this planet, including other apes, it is, if you look at this, the classic evolution, I don't know if you can still hear me, about 1 million years into our evolution, we had developed the ability to make tools. Our cognitive ability was pretty fully developed and not far off where it is now. But over the last 2-3 million years, our brains have increased in size by a volume of 3. And most of that increase in volume has been around our social side of things, not the cognitive side. And the reason for that, if you go back, there was a certain point at which we branched off, even from Neanderthals, because what we could do is assemble in large numbers, in hundreds and thousands, around abstract ideas. An idea would be a religion. In modern days, it's brands, it's concepts. And this is what's fundamental about us. And that's why the language, the empathy, the connection bit of the brain grew so much over that period of time. It's what made us different. So what you see is us as a species, we are the empathy animal and the storytelling animal. We're not the cognitive clever animal. That comes part of it, but the thing that makes us different is that. It's that has led to these incredible achievements of humans over time. And I love this quote. We often perceive ourselves as thinking machines, and we happen to have feelings. But actually, it's the other way round. Our point of difference, we are feeling machines that happen to think. So if you have that as a starting point, where we're trying to figure out this unholy mess in this world we have at the moment, shouldn't we be looking at how we connect with each other at an emotional level a little bit more. So that's where we started moving along. And what's good is that we see empathy, almost as though it's just been invented, beginning to come into the zeitgeist. So you see everything from Jacinda Ardern, Marcus Rashford, that when Biden was elected, the people have chosen empathy. It is beginning to come to the fore. We have a half-day session on what is empathy. I won't go through all of that, but at a very simple level, it is that ability to feel someone else and actually reflect the feelings. And I'm sure people understand that, but for us as EmpathyLab, what was important was that it's a core life skill. It's interesting that the Wales curriculum, having branched off from the English curriculum, mentions empathy 39 times. The English curriculum mentions it once or twice. So increasingly in Denmark, it's taught as a key curriculum item. So it is a core life skill, but crucially at the time where we're trying to sort out diversity as being a key issue today, or key theme today, so many different things we're trying to sort out, including saving the planet.
You can imagine what someone else thinks, feels, does, is, and we become more empathetic. And ultimately, that makes us become more human.
I think empathy is the biggest superpower that human beings have, and the more that we can harness it in ourselves, the sort of better we can be as humans. And I really truly believe that increased empathy will change the world, maybe even save the world.
If there's something we need in this world, more than anything else, it is empathy. It's understanding other people and understanding the world about us. This will come to all of us hugely through books.
So there you have it, the starting point. You might recognise some of those authors. We're working with about 300-400, some of them more recognised like Michael Morpurgo, other wonderful authors like Holly Bourne. But they always seem, in fact, authors are the ultimate empathy artists when you think about it. The whole work is based on putting yourself and imagining somebody else. So, some good bits of news. First of all, if empathy is part of the solution, empathetic people are not born. They're made. We can actually learn empathy. 10% of our empathy is we start with, the rest is learned. And that our plastic brains, you can keep on changing it. The other bit of good news is that reading develops empathy. And so if I tell you a fact, like knives are sharp, then that goes into two parts of your brain, the Broca's and the Wernicke's. And that's where it stops, nothing else happens. But if I tell you a story of when I was with my 3-year-old daughter, and I won't go through the whole story because we don't have time, but start talking about how she got out a knife and was experimenting to see how it would feel as she rubbed it on her finger, and you go on and on and on. Even a poor story in the hands of a poor storyteller will light up different bits of your brain. Over here you have the motor cortex will immediately start moving along with my hand. If I talked about smells, I could hear fire, there was a fire burning, you might smell smoke. Your brain lights up like a Christmas tree. But crucially, it tricks you into thinking you're really there. That's when we cry, when we're reading a story. We actually are there in the story. So, if we then go on, Holly, who is a young adult author, she's also a psychologist, she describes it very well, I think.
So when I was learning about empathy with EmpathyLab, what I found absolutely fascinating is that when we read stories, they've shown in terms of our brains what's going on in neuroscience, we actually feel the feelings and emotions of this imaginary character. We're basically looking at a dead bit of wood when we read a book, and we're vividly hallucinating and experiencing these experiences as if they were happening to us. I just think that's such a powerful thing. It's just blown my mind. In terms of
So, that's interesting. So it's an example of where, at a point where we think everything we're inventing in the human race, social media, digital, agriculture was apparently a bad thing, actually this is a good one. It's like an amazing technology where we can actually transport and put ourselves into other people's shoes. That's fantastic. This was the bit of research that blew our minds. Feeling empathy in a book is one thing, but there's now ample evidence that it converts into real-life empathy. So if you think, what could we do with all of the children reading books, and what could we do with all the authors writing books to amplify that? And that's how we move forward. We then needed to look, and this might sound strange, and I feel slightly humbled with the audience of some wonderful writers as well, what is the story? But it has been really useful, because actually, if you go back to that evolution slide, it's deeply embedded with us. I found when I was making up stories with my children, they understood story arcs or mountains when they were 2 or 3 years old. It's deeply within us. What's interesting also is that over the last 10 years, with various imaging techniques, we can now see the neural circuits. We can actually see what hormones are being secreted as it goes around. So if you look at this good old story arc that everyone would learn at school, I think even Aristotle 2,000 years ago said a story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so you have the establishment of the routine, you get this is the problem, and then resolution. What we know, and this is a massive oversimplification, when the problem comes along with the story, stress hormone, cortisol, comes in. When you're going through the story, and there are various bits where you put yourself in the story, the love hormone, oxytocin, comes in. I mean, there's lots of others as well, but you put yourself there. And then, when you reach the climax, and you think, oh, this is the point, I can't put down the book. And you go to the resolution. This is what's really interesting, because at the point of the resolution of a story, a big one, a little one, your brain is flooded with hormones, positive ones, dopamine, the reward hormone, and oxytocin. And at that point, your mind is open to new ideas. If any of you have seen the John Lewis ad that's going around, just come out, that is putting this into practice. Do they mention John Lewis at all during the ad? No. Do they say Christmas? No. What they do is they tell you a story that takes you on that emotional roller coaster, and at the end they just say, John Lewis and Christmas. What that means for us, and what that means for you, as either readers or writers, is that you can take children, adults on a journey, and then at the point where you've got the resolution, you have an open audience to listen to new ideas. So, what that means is our work became twofold. What is an empathy-boosting book, but what could you do as well? And so, for example, with a school in Great Yarmouth, a very Brexity area, there was a big issue around perception of refugees. We introduced a couple of books, and one you can see here, My Name Is Not a Refugee. The other is Welcome to Nowhere by Elizabeth Laird. It's the story of Omar, who's 12 years old. Now, I remember when I was reading that to my 12-year-old daughter, she said, God, I got sick to death of hearing facts about refugees. But now I've heard about the story of Omar and how he was growing up with his brother and sister and how they got bombed out of their city and then they went into a refugee camp. I realise that they're the same, and this quote is very similar. But what's crucial, if you go to the empathy action, is that school, without any encouragement, the children said, so can we meet a refugee? They asked the head teacher to make contact with a refugee charity, and it all went on from there. Similarly, we create creative and immersive activities. So at the younger age group, we create empathy classes. So you put something physical on, but it prompts a discussion saying, now you've read a story about something, now you're looking at this situation. How are you seeing it in a new way? Immersive activities, if you read a book, for example, Mr. Stink by David Walliams, even David Walliams is an empathetic author. That achieves a certain amount, but then if you get the whole school to go and sleep overnight outside, then you have a discussion, then you change attitudes, then you start moving to changing the world. And that's what our schools have been doing. So just to round up with a kind of bit of a blitz through of what we do to help build empathy. We have 4 different programs. We work with academics, so everything we do is not just, we had an idea, let's give it a go. And so at University of Sussex and at University of Cambridge. We have a schools programme, funnily enough, predominantly in Wales, but with a lot of the innovative stuff happening over in England, and that's growing. We also look at what actually are the ingredients of an empathy-boosting book. And this is the bit that has really surprised us, how much the writing community has said, we'd like to work with you, we'd like to understand this better. We run 2-day author masterclasses where we're humble to talk to them about how to write stories. And so, next week we'll be doing our annual Read for Empathy Awards. And so these are the sorts of things that our esteemed judging panel, that was them there, look for: character development, dealing with issues, developing key empathy skills. We create Read for Empathy guides each year, either for primary or secondary level. And they come from a whole range of authors from different backgrounds, different age groups, and deal with different empathy-related issues, as you can see here, whether it be perspective taking, communication, social action. We also work, and this would be interesting for any authors here, if it's good to write empathetically, how do you do that? So this is just an excerpt from one author, but we have them from a number of authors.
So how do I create characters in my work, and how can I help you create characters and learn to kind of feel the feelings of this imaginary person or animal or creature that you have decided to make up in your head? And I would say the most important starting point into writing empathetically is to learn and understand your own emotions first. Like, in order to be able to create a realistic character who has realistic feelings and realistic reactions to things, you've got to understand yourself first. To me, the most important part of empathy is learning how to name your own feelings. So I've tried to really learn over the course of my life to never label an emotion, good or bad, and try and run away from the bad ones. So to just sort of be curious about every emotion that I have. So when I'm happy, I'll be like, okay, oh, this is great, love being happy. But if I'm feeling sad or angry, rather than kind of push away that discomfort, I've learned to be curious about that discomfort and to name the feeling. I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling angry. Sometimes I'm feeling sad and angry because I'm hungry. You know, you can get really minute detail into these emotions.
So you see a common theme here. So much around reading, writing is about not necessarily going on writing school. It's actually getting in contact with very human things, your own emotions and feeling other people's. We also run an annual Empathy Day. It's kind of an emotion-fueled World Book Day where authors go out to schools all over, and there's lots of really fun activities. Emotional literacy education can be made fun with books, so that's a big learning for us as well. A lot of the authors we work with contribute 500-word empathy shorts, which are amazing for use in classrooms and parents with children. We also have Empathy Day Live, which is kind of a day of programming where authors create lots of little ways of developing empathy skills from young. We've got Joseph Coelho, the Children's Laureate for the next 2 years. He worked with us about 3 years ago to develop wonderful ways of naming emotions for 6- and 7-year-olds through to Holly Baum working with young adults. We also have Empathy Action Month, where we actually put empathy into action. So there's a lot that we do, But it all comes back to, and this is, I think, one thing I would leave you with, is that it's very simple developing empathy. Michael Mapergo brings it to life wonderfully. I would add to what he says.
It's all about empathy. And the only way that problems are solved politically, historically, in this world is through understanding and empathy. And I know no better pathway to understanding than books. So read, and here's the thing, write, because that's the way we spread empathy. And
read, excuse me, read, write, and talk, and feel. That's me done.